Hello there everyone, how you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're going into r/BoomersBeingFools, where boomers are in fact being fools. And very boomerish while they're at it. If you enjoy, please press that like button, leave a comment on the video with your thoughts on the stories, and maybe share this with a friend or two. Now, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Probably the greatest reaction to an entitled boomer I've seen in years. I was at Kroger yesterday buying groceries. There were only 2 checkout lanes open, and it was around 5 p.m.ish, so the afternoon rush was in full swing. Both lines were about 8 to 10 people long. I was in line for one checkout lane, and some mid-30s guy was in the checkout lane next to me. He was the last one in his line, so was second to last in my line. A woman got in line behind him who looked to be about 70. You know, sometimes when you meet someone you just get a sense they're kind of a butthole. Yeah, she was one of those types. She pushed her cart up behind him, made a few comments that we all ignored about not having enough open registers, and we'll be here all day at this rate. Some time passes and we're all shuffling forward as the line moves up. The guy who's in front of the older woman is now next in line for his lane, once the person in front of him finishes. And then she started her bull. I hear this woman say to the man, "Excuse me, I'm in a big hurry. Would it be alright if I just went in front of you?" While she was saying this, she moved her cart up alongside his, grabbed the front of his cart, and began to push his cart out of the way so she could get in front of him. The guy looks at her without saying anything, grabs the handle of his cart so she can't push it any further to the side, and takes a big step forward so the front half of his cart is now between the 2 drink coolers on either side of the lane, so her cart can't fit alongside his. He then goes back to looking straight ahead without saying a single word. The boomer, who's a lady, then begins to boomer. She started loudly demanding that he let her go in front of him because she has more stuff and has to get it home. Starts complaining that he's disrespectful and tells him it's ladies first, but please go right ahead. And so on and so on. She had the attitude of a woman who had rarely, if ever, been told no in her life, and was handling it about as well as you would expect. The guy once again didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his pockets, pulled out his AirPod case, and put both of his AirPods into his ears. Then he took out his phone and very slowly and deliberately slid the volume bar on his screen to maximum. Then he went back to staring straight ahead without saying a word. The boomer bitched at him for another minute or two until she finally noticed that he couldn't hear her, then went back to snarkily making comments at his back while the guy's stuff was rung up. The guy paid for his stuff and left without ever glancing at her. She was absolutely seething the entire time. That guy was my hero. Never even tried to argue with her, just shut her down and went about his day. "I have more stuff than you" is not a reason you should go in front of someone. If I have 50 things and you only have 1 or 2, I'll usually be proactively nice and let you cut if you look like you're in a hurry. That's how supermarket etiquette works. Looks like she never learned how to be nice. Or be a decent human being, for that matter. Anyway, on to the next story. My boomer father died alone. In 2019, my MAGA Vietnam veteran father told me that I was no longer a part of his family. He did this in the middle of the Chuck E. Cheese at my niece's 6th birthday party. The reason? Dr. Phil told him to hold a family meeting where we, myself, mom, sister, her boyfriend, and my then fiance, and my best friend who I live with were to sit down, shut up, listen, as he told us what he thought about our lives, our jobs, our significant others, and so on. And we all noped out of that. Not only are we functioning adults with jobs, homes of our own, but to do this in front of everyone and not privately, my anxiety shot through the roof. And since I didn't agree to it, he told me I was no longer a part of his family. That evening, he called and asked if I could come over and we could do it one-on-one. I still refused and asked if he wanted to know why I was so anxious about it. You guys, I took a breath and was ready to give him my heart and soul to this man. Then he said the last words I ever heard him speak to me. I don't care. I said, neither do I, and hung up. The next morning, I woke up to him sending Islamophobic propaganda to my friend and threatening to her to go eat poo and die. I sent him a strongly worded manifesto, cutting him out of my life once and for all. Holidays were then spent with my friends, family, and my mom, my sisters, and her daughters in secret. Then COVID happened. I got a voicemail from him saying if my mom died from it, it would be my fault because I wasn't in their lives. In May of 2020, he decided God didn't believe in divorce, packed everything he owned into a U-Haul, and went to Arizona to be with his ex-wife. He had been with Mom for almost 40 years. He told my sister the last 36 years of his life had been a waste. At the time, I was 36. We thought we were finally free of him, but he pulled the same stuff with his ex, and she kicked him out. 3 months later, he came back to a restraining order. All of us gone and wanting nothing to do with him. He actually had the audacity to be surprised. He said he was just going for a visit. Who the fuck packs the largest U-Haul you can rent and goes for a visit? Fast forward to now. He had a heart attack after 50 years of smoking and died on his living room floor. He was there a day or two before his home care nurse found him. This was February 22nd, and I've gone through every range of emotion possible since then. I miss the man he was before the Trump coup, but I haven't seen that man in forever. Now all of us are just saying, good riddance. Boomers, don't be fools like this. Love your kids for who they are, and let them be happy. Sometimes you get into fights with family, it's normal, but you have to choose who is worth hanging on to. I cut out my brother after living with my parents and I for nearly 2 years and contributing maybe $200 in that time, called me lazy. I had just graduated college and was taking care of my disabled mom and doing housework. He then screamed at my mom about me, dehumanized me, and left. I told my mom I had one less brother now. She agreed, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. Now on to the next story. Boomer freaked out when he found out I'm not part of the HOA. My parents had this rental property that they passed on to me when they died, and the house has been there since before the neighborhood next to it was built. So it's not part of the HOA. It's been established several times with the previous renters and my parents. While we were renovating to prepare to move in, we installed gates at 3 entrances to the property because we didn't want people to come into the property. A month after we finished, we had a visit from this boomer, who opened our back gate since the front one is locked, just to give us the welcome to the HOA packet. I told him we're not part of the neighborhood, so the HOA doesn't apply to our property. He huffed and said that I am since his property is right next door. I nicely repeated myself and asked him not to come into my property again without permission. He scoffed, saying, I don't see any no trespassing signs, so he could do what he wanted. Eventually, he left. The next day, we installed locks on the gates and no trespassing sign. The next thing we know, we're getting HOA violation letters in our mailbox. The letters also listed things that were happening in our backyard that someone could only see if they were looking over the fence. After the 5th notice that threatened eviction, I called the number listed and explained to a lady the situation, and said that the HOA president said we were, and was the one reporting us, but all we had to do was prove we weren't, and they would waive the fines and leave us alone. I gathered the paperwork, and went to the next meeting where I gave them the paperwork, which proved I was right. The boomer then lost his mind and said that it didn't matter and we needed to follow his rules and change the things he wanted. Apparently the reasons he was upset that we installed gates and fixed a fence that prevented him from going where he wanted, when he wanted, on his walks. The gates fence also prevents his family from taking a shortcut to the pool. The backyard was filled with things that he didn't want to see from his second floor balcony. And the trees we painted and the new fence prevented him from seeing our entire property. He got so angry that he needed to be brought to a different room. I left soon after, but haven't heard a single thing since. It's amazing how entitled some boomers are. When I purchased my home many years ago as a new construction, I had written into our sales contract that we would not and could not be entered into a neighborhood HOA unless we personally agreed. We only have a yearly cost for upkeep of our community, like retention period, and the contract for that cost is like $30 a year. So a year later, a few months after the house is built, a boomer wanted to change our retention pond association into a full HOA, electing himself as a de facto president for life. I brought a lawyer to the one and only meeting of our retention and pond association, showed them my home contracts to the building lawyer, forced all the residents to vote that no, they don't want this boomer jackass ruling the neighborhood, and the building lawyer was only there to draw up our pond stuff, and this boomer was a huge ass to her, the whole meeting. The look on the dude's face when I showed them that even if he made a stupid HOA, I wouldn't have to join it was so satisfying. He was purple with rage and stormed out, leaving his wife to apologize for his outburst. He had a full-on tantrum, banging on chairs and tables and screaming at me. All the other residents ended up asking my lawyer and the other building lawyer to draw up a rider to amend their building contracts to be like mine. It's been nearly 20 years and the dude still curses at me anytime he sees me, which is quite often since he lives like 3 doors down. I'm proud to have stopped him from creating that HOA. Anyway, that's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed, remember to check out my other videos. Like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts on the stories, and I will see you all next time. Hasta la pasta.